You're not entirely sure what wakes you first. Maybe it's the thudding of waves against the wooden hull, or the sharp cold biting through the wool blanket you've bundled around your shoulders. Or maybe it's the smell. Smoke and salt, and something a bit too human. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You sit up slowly, your back creaking louder than the ship's boards. All around you, the other men, scruffy, snoring, occasionally muttering, are still wrapped in dreams or nightmares. Hard to tell. You're all packed in like fish in a barrel, which ironically is also how you smell. You are aboard a Viking longship, not the dramatic horned helmet version you've seen in cartoons, but the real thing, low to the water, carved from oak, the dragon-headed prow watching the waves like it might bite them. It's the 9th century, probably, although even the best historians will shrug and say, well, around then. Your hands are numb from the wind, your feet soaked from bilge water. The sun is just rising behind a curtain of gray, casting everything in that grim early morning hue that makes every face look like it hasn't slept in 3 weeks. Which, to be fair, is roughly accurate. There's no engine noise, no sails unfurling dramatically in slow motion, just oars and the slow, brutal rhythm of them. Row, row. And no, not gently down the stream. A voice grunts from the shadows near you, something about an island up ahead. You gradually reach for your gear. A dented iron helmet, your scrappy axe, a wooden bowl that smells like last night's fish stew. You won't be needing the bowl where you're going, but you bring it anyway. It's your only possession that doesn't double as a weapon. You glance down at your arms, already bruised from the trip, and think just for a second that maybe farming back home wasn't so bad. But then again, you remember the taxes, and your cousins stealing your goats. And suddenly, the idea of pillaging coastal villages seems like a solid alternative. This is life in a Viking raiding party. It's not glamorous, it's not noble. It is, however, alarmingly effective. You are one of many, scruffy, sea-hardened, and perpetually damp. But you're also one of the few who made it this far. And you probably won't make it through this day. Before we dive axe first into this story, take a deep breath. If you're still awake, we'd love it if you liked and subscribed. It keeps the longship afloat, so to speak. Leave a comment with your local time and where you're listening from. We've always been curious about where our fellow raiders rest their heads. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. Paddles splashing quietly, the sea rolling like breath beneath us, and the first glimpse of foreign land just visible on the horizon. The shore approaches slowly, too slowly. You've been rowing for what feels like hours, though you lost track of time, somewhere between your 4th cramp and your 6th angry prayer to Thor. But at last, the land unfurls, rocky cliffs, sparse trees, a scattering of distant huts that look deceptively peaceful, as if they don't yet know what's coming. They don't. You're not alone in your anticipation. All around you, the crew begins to shift. Some murmur prayers, others sharpen blades with the kind of casual intensity normally reserved for cutting bread. One man is sewing up a hole in his boot. It's oddly touching, in a please don't single quotes T-dash, let dash my dash, foot dash freeze dash off dash today sort of way. You clutch your axe and try to remember everything you've been told. Hit fast, hit hard, don't get flanked. And most importantly, loot first, questions later. Your leader, Harold, yes, another Harold, stands up at the prow, long blonde hair whipping in the wind like he's posing for a battle hymn. His sword is ancient, nicked and blackened, probably older than this boat. He says something about honor and glory, and Odin watching, but mostly you just nod along, thinking about whether you can grab 2 chickens and a silver goblet before someone throws a spear at your face. Historians still debate whether these raids were purely about conquest or whether they were, well, partially motivated by the fact that living in Scandinavia was kind of miserable. Long winters, short crops, zero sunlight. Even the goats look depressed. As the long ship grinds against the gravel of the shore, you hop out, water slapping your knees, heart pounding. The cold grabs your legs like a warning, but too late. You're here now. You sprint up the beach, slipping on seaweed, dodging rocks, shouting a battle cry that's more wheeze than war. Chickens scatter. A dog barks. A man with a rake tries to defend his hut. You sidestep him, barely. Inside one of the homes, you find a ceramic bowl painted with odd little runes and smiling deer. You pocket it. It's weird. You like it. Maybe it'll hold stew later, if you're lucky. Outside, the chaos blooms. Smoke begins to rise. Children cry. An old woman throws a loaf of bread at your head with disturbing accuracy. It's hard to feel like a hero in moments like these. But then again, that's the thing. Raiders weren't heroes. They were desperate, hungry, sometimes bored, and surprisingly organized. These raids weren't just random madness. They were strategic, often coordinated across dozens of villages, like a violent roadshow, except no one wanted tickets. One guy, Born, massive, red-haired, smells like a goat, starts humming an old song about sea serpents. He does this every raid, and no one has the heart to stop him. It's his process. The sun has now climbed just enough to blind you as you squint toward the next hut. You wish you'd brought a helmet with a visor, or sunglasses, or stayed home. Still, despite the chaos, you feel a strange calm settle in your chest. Maybe it's the adrenaline, or maybe it's just knowing that for the first time in weeks, you're warm. There's fire. There's food. There's movement. You exist. You matter. And hey, you found a bowl with deer on it. Welcome to your first raid. Smoke curls up into the crisp morning air, twisting lazily above the thatched rooftops like it has nowhere important to be. You, on the other hand, are extremely busy, currently dodging a swinging frying pan and trying not to slip in someone's spilled oat porridge. You briefly consider the irony that you've crossed the sea, risked life and limb, just to get assaulted by a breakfast food. The village wasn't built to resist you. Most weren't. No walls, no guards, just a few stunned farmers who'd really hoped today would be uneventful. It's a coastal settlement, likely Irish or Northern English. No one here speaks your language, but the message comes across clearly enough. They want you gone. You retreat from the pan-wielding elder and catch your breath behind a half-collapsed fence. A chicken eyes you with clear contempt. Somewhere behind you, someone shouts, and you hear the splintering crash of a door giving way. It's not elegant. It's not cinematic. But it's efficient. You regroup with the others near the central longhouse. The smoke is thicker here, and someone's managed to wrangle a few sheep who now bleat miserably as they're tied to a post. One of the younger raiders, probably his first trip, tries to look serious while covered in feathers. It's unclear if it's part of the loot or just a deeply unfortunate pillow incident. You notice a curious detail near the longhouse entrance. Above the doorway, there's a carved stone with swirling symbols, likely religious. Not your religion, obviously. Yours is more about thunder gods, wolves eating the sun, and the occasional human sacrifice. Theirs seems quieter. Maybe it involves less screaming. Maybe more bread making. Inside the longhouse, the heat hits you like a wall. A hearth still burns at the center, and above it hang blackened pots, garlic braids, and a dried fish the size of your leg. It smells earthy, smoke, spices, the faint suggestion of cheese gone mildly philosophical. There's a sense of life here, not just utility. Someone loved this place, maybe even hated it too. Both things leave marks. You don't linger. You grab what looks valuable. A woven cloak, a bronze brooch, and a jar of what might be honey. Or lamp oil. You're hoping for honey. You also spot a tiny wooden toy. An animal, probably a horse or a dog, carved by hand. It's been dropped near the hearth. You don't take it. You leave it there. Back outside, you blink against the sun, just in time to see Harold waving everyone back toward the ship. Quick in, quick out. That's the rule. Stay too long and the local warriors will show up, and they rarely come with frying pans. As you run back, feet pounding over wet grass and clumps of panicked poultry, you can't help but feel the briefest, strangest ache. Not guilt, exactly. More like homesickness in reverse. A sense that you're leaving something behind, even though you never belonged here in the first place. Weird cultural tidbit of the day. Some Viking raiders believed that certain animals, like ravens, were spirit guides leading them to glory or doom. Today, 3 have followed your ship since dawn. You're not sure what that means, but they're staring at you. A lot. One is perched on the longhouse roof now, watching as if it's taking notes. Back on the ship, the crew is loud with adrenaline. Someone jokes about who got the ugliest trinket. Another is already gnawing on bread he definitely didn't pay for. The sail creaks as it's raised, wind catching it like a sigh. You sit, soaked and sore, and try not to think too much. Historians still debate whether these raids were seasonal, ritualized events, or if they were more like freelance chaos jobs. Either way, your job today involved running from a toddler who threw a spoon at your ankle. So, that's the legacy. The oars dip again into the sea. You head north, and the land grows small behind you, then disappears. Your day's out now, the coast long behind you, and the sea has shifted moods again. Now it's glassy and gray, like a giant eye watching everything you do. A kind of water that makes you feel like you're not really moving at all, just floating between here and nowhere. The ocean is ancient and moody, and on days like this, you get the sense it's debating whether or not to keep you. The long ship glides gently. The wind pulling it forward like it, too, is half asleep. No raiding today. Just rowing, drying out your cloak, and trying not to think about how bad everyone smells. Answer: very bad. The sea cannot fix it. The gods cannot fix it. You lie back against a coil of rope and stare at the sky. Clouds drift past like bored sheep. You count them. You name them. One looks like a goat. One looks like Bjorn. One looks like a goat eating Bjorn. This entertains you more than it should. Around you, the crew settles into the rhythm of post-raid life. Some mend torn tunics with bone needles. Others carve little wooden figurines, boats, bears, the occasional abstract chicken. Bjorn sings again. The same sea serpent ballad, but this time with added hand motions. Someone throws a fish at him. He sings louder. You're not sure if this is a performance or a medical condition. You take out the bronze brooch you grabbed. It's not worth much, simple, dented, old, but someone wore it every day. You can still see the imprint where their fingers rubbed the edge smooth. You wonder who they were. A farmer? A mother? Someone who thought today was just another day? You also examine the jar. You pop the lid cautiously. It's definitely not honey. It's fish oil, thick, sour, and insultingly pungent. You seal it quickly, pretending this didn't happen. You whisper an apology to your pack. Obscure cultural tidbit. Viking warriors often buried their dead with coins in their mouths. Not for trade in the afterlife. No, this was to keep the dead quiet. No coin, no silence. You don't carry coins anymore. You try not to think about that. But you do glance around the ship, wondering if anyone else is coinless. The silence suddenly feels conditional. Lunch is hard bread dipped in sea water, and a strip of smoked meat so tough it might legally count as stone. You chew slowly, dreamily, half wondering what vegetables taste like. You have vague childhood memories of onions. You don't know if you imagined them. That evening, the ship moors at a quiet inlet, just a sliver of rocky shore and a cold stream trickling down from the hills. The air smells of pine and moss and whetstone. There are no huts, no people, just you, the crew, and the wind. You unpack for the night, laying out your damp things to dry, and sink down into a bed of old furs like they're clouds. A dog somewhere in your memory curls at your feet. You never had a dog, but the memory keeps coming back. Warmth, weight, breathing. Above you, the stars begin to wake, clear and bright tonight, as if they're all leaning in. And somewhere out there, across this black stretch of water, another village sleeps. For now. You wake to the sound of rain pattering on your forehead, which is not how anyone dreams of waking. It's soft, steady, and completely disrespectful to the wool blanket you pulled over your face during the night. The sky is a low, misty gray, like the world has decided not to fully show up today. The kind of sky that makes you think even the sun has called in sick. You sit up slowly, joints cracking like branches underfoot. Around you, the other raiders are beginning to stir, grumbling, sneezing, poking at breakfast fires that refuse to light. The fire pit sputters in protest as someone tries to revive it with damp moss and a lot of hope. The stream nearby burbles cheerfully, entirely unaware of how bad your back hurts. Or maybe it knows. Maybe it's laughing. You trudge to the edge of the water and splash your face. It's cold. Of course it's cold. That's its entire personality. Still, it clears the fog in your head. The reflection looking back at you is tired, wild-haired, and more beard than man at this point. You look like someone who's been living off dried fish, wet wool, and moral ambiguity. Harold is already awake, perched on a rock like some ancient statue, staring out to sea. His sword rests beside him like a loyal dog. He doesn't speak much on days like this. You suspect it's part of the whole leader thing. Speak less, brood more. Very effective branding. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. Classic Harold. Today's task isn't raiding. It's mending, cleaning, and restocking. That means climbing the hillside to gather wood and herbs, checking nets in the inlet, and hoping nobody finds a snake in their boot. Lorne did. He now walks with a slight limp and refuses to go near anything leafy. He's also taken to muttering. It had intentions. As you hike uphill with a few others, your boots squish unpleasantly in the damp moss. Birds chatter above, their calls sharp and high, like gossip in a language you'll never quite understand. You spot a cluster of mushrooms growing under a tree, orange-capped, slightly glowing. You do not touch them. You remember what happened last time someone thought mushrooms were probably fine. He spoke in tongues for 2 days and tried to marry the sail. The trees here are tall and narrow, like they're trying not to touch anything. You pass a patch of earth that's been dug up recently. Maybe an animal, maybe not. You pretend not to notice it. Sometimes it's better not to wonder. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Viking healers believe birch sap could treat everything from wounds to melancholy. One of the older raiders insists on rubbing it on his knees every morning. He still limps, but insists the limp is wiser now. You try it. Your knees remain unphilosophical. You gather herbs you vaguely remember being useful, yarrow maybe? Or something that rhymes with it. The other foragers laugh quietly when you pick a whole handful of something they call sheep sneezewort. You pretend that's what you meant to do. They stop laughing when the sneezewort actually works. By midday, the fires are going again. The smell of cooking fish mixes with pine smoke and something distinctly herbal. You're not sure whether it's lunch or a poultice. Either way, you eat it. Someone carves the deer bowl you found into a drinking cup. You can't decide if that's better or worse. Historians still debate whether Viking bands truly rested between raids or simply drifted until they found their next target. Some suggest they formed semi-permanent camps. Others think they just needed a break from Bjorn's singing. You see the argument both ways. As night falls, You sit by the fire, your cloak steaming slightly as it dries. The stars peek out again, shy and scattered. You find the shape of a longship in them. Maybe it's always been there. Maybe you're just starting to notice. The waves hush against the shore like they're trying to tell a secret. You lean back, eyes heavy, and for a brief, flickering second, you almost feel at peace. Almost. Morning comes without ceremony. No horns, no omens, no ravens delivering cryptic messages. Just the quiet splatter of rain giving way to a brittle golden sky. The kind of sunrise that slips in like it's apologizing for being late. The sea beyond the inlet is calm, and a thin veil of mist lingers over the river's mouth, as if deciding whether to stay or let you through. You break camp slowly, folding your furs and repacking supplies. Everything smells faintly of pine and damp wool. Bjorn is still limping. You're still pretending your shoulder doesn't hurt. The longship waits at the inlet, like a patient beast, its hull dark with dew. Today, you sail inland. Up a river this time, narrow, winding, lined with trees that press in close, like they're watching. The current is slow, but your oars cut steadily through it, sending ripples across the surface like tiny, deliberate signatures. Row, breathe, watch. The river feels like a breath held just under the surface. The river bends often, each turn hiding what comes next. It's tense in a different way, not loud like a raid, not calm like the open sea. This is the in-between space, where trees might whisper, and every rustle on the bank might be a watcher, or a deer, or someone waiting with a spear. The silence isn't empty, it's anticipatory, like something is choosing not to speak. You pass a stone carving on the bank, half covered in moss, cracked by time. It looks Roman, maybe? You're not entirely sure. But it's old. Old enough that even the trees seem to respect it. One of the crew points and mutters, "Ghost stone." You nod. Sounds about right. Someone in the back of the ship ties a charm made of driftwood and string to the prow. It's shaped like a spiral. For luck, they say. You don't question it. You're not superstitious. Just atmospheric. One of the younger men swears he saw movement in the brush. Everyone pauses, oars held still in the water. You listen, really listen. Wind, leaves, a distant bird, and then maybe something else. A footstep, a voice, or the river breathing out. No one can be sure. You move on. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Viking warriors believed rivers had spirits, old, slow things that watched from beneath the water and chose whether to let you pass. To show respect, some would toss in small offerings, a coin, a ring, a piece of bread. You offer a splinter from your oar. It feels right. A moment later, a fish jumps near the boat. You consider it a sign, or at least a polite nod. Lunch is simple again, dried apples and flatbread. You find a piece of mint tucked in your pack and chew it slowly. For a moment, your breath doesn't smell like despair. It's a small victory. Across the water, a white heron stands still in the reeds. It watches you pass without blinking. Historians still debate whether inland raiding was as common as coastal pillaging. Some argue that the logistics of rowing upriver made it rare. Others say it was precisely the rivers that made it possible, like veins running deep into the land, leading straight to its unguarded heart. The sun drifts overhead, light pouring down in golden shafts between the trees. It's almost beautiful. You wonder, not for the first time, what it would be like to stay, to build something here. A hut, a fire, a life, something not meant to burn. But the river keeps moving. So do you. And around the next bend, smoke rises. Thin, pale, new. Another village waits. And you are not yet done. The smoke is fresh, still climbing, still light enough to mean it's from a hearth, not a fire set in fear. That's good. Or bad. Depends on which side of the axe you're standing on. Your ship drifts closer, oars tucked up, silent now. Everyone hunches forward, trying to see through the trees crowding the river's edge. The village is tucked just beyond a thin stretch of marshland, half hidden behind willows and reeds. It's small, maybe a dozen homes, all low and thatched, with laundry hanging out to dry in the open air. A dog barks, then stops. The only other sound is the soft ripple of the current beneath you. You anchor the ship in the shallows and slip over the side, boots sinking slightly into the soft river mud. The reeds whisper around you as you move, brushing your arms like hesitant hands. You and the others fan out, quiet as you can. Your axe stays in your belt. For now, there's a strange feeling in your chest. Not fear, not excitement either. More like tension holding its breath. You've done this before, but this village feels different. It feels watched, not guarded, just watched. Like the trees themselves are taking note. As you creep up a slope, you pass a carved post beside the trail, worn from rain, but still distinct. It's a figure, vaguely human, with bulging eyes and an open mouth. Probably a guardian spirit, possibly a warning. Almost definitely both. You reach the edge of the clearing. The homes are quiet. A few chickens peck near a trough. A woman is kneeling by a wooden bucket, washing something. She hasn't seen you. You stop, not out of mercy, out of confusion. You're not used to being this close before the shouting starts. Then you hear a bell. Not a church bell, just a little iron one, probably tied to someone's door. It jingles in the breeze, but it breaks the silence. The woman looks up, sees you, her eyes widen. And just like that, the shouting starts. The village springs to life, like someone kicked a hornet's nest. Men appear with staffs and shovels. A few women run for the woods, pulling children behind them. You draw your axe. It feels both heavy and familiar. You and the others move quickly, disabling, not destroying. You don't want to burn this place. You want it emptied. You want what's inside. One man lunges at you with a hay fork. You dodge, trip him, move on. You see Harold out of the corner of your eye, waving the others to surround the longhouse. It always comes down to the longhouse. Obscure cultural tidbit. Viking raiders often took bells from churches, not just for the metal, but because they believed bells carried voices. And some voices weren't meant to ring forever. You wonder if that little iron bell will end up melted down or strung from the mast. Either way, its job is over. Within the hour, the village is silent again, emptied, though not ruined. A few things have been taken. Tools, grain, silver buttons, a carved walking stick that Orm insists is magic. He walks without limping now. You don't ask questions. You return to the ship, carrying a sack of what might be dried berries, a wooden cup shaped like a bear, and a length of bright red wool. Not bad, not your best haul, but still better than nothing. And no blood on your boots this time. Just mud. Historians still debate whether raids like this were ritualized or purely opportunistic. Was there a sacred pattern to how it began and ended? Or was it just a matter of getting in, getting out, and hoping no one you recognized was on the other end of the sword? You push off from the riverbank as twilight stretches long across the water. The trees don't move, but they remember. Night on the river is a quiet thing. The longship drifts without oars now, just catching the lazy pull of the current. A few of the men are already asleep, sprawled across sacks of grain or bundled under cloaks that still smell faintly of smoke. One man snores with such conviction that the sail flaps in rhythm. The world is hushed, except for the distant hum of frogs and the occasional snap of a branch on the shore. You sit near the prow, cloak wrapped around your shoulders, watching the dark drift past. Stars twinkle above, faint, uncertain, like they've never been entirely comfortable with their job. The moon is a thin silver curve tonight, a bowl half filled or half spilled, depending on how your day went. The river reflects it all, gently warping the sky into a shimmering, watery dreamscape. Trees lean in from both banks like silent witnesses, tall and spectral in the moonlight. You can't shake the feeling that something is watching, not hostile, not friendly, just present. The woods do that sometimes. They listen more than they speak. Beside you, Bjorn is mumbling in his sleep, something about a serpent and a sausage. You pretend not to hear it. Let the man dream in peace. Let the serpent sort itself out. You reach into your satchel and pull out the bear-shaped cup you took. It's odd. The snout is too long, and the eyes are lopsided, like someone who only thought they'd seen a bear tried to recreate one from memory. You run your fingers over the wood, tracing the rough lines. It was made with care. That matters. Then you notice something etched faintly on the bottom. A series of marks, maybe letters, or just Whittler's doodles. You show it to the man sitting nearest you. He shrugs. Could be a name, could be a spell, could be a shopping list. Vikings weren't famous for labeling things clearly. You hold the cup for a long time, not drinking, just holding. Something about it makes you feel known, like someone left a part of themselves behind in it. Maybe someone did. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Viking crews believed that personal items carried pieces of the soul. Drinking from another's cup could make you braver, or bring on their curses. You tuck the bear cup away, just in case it's the second thing. No one needs a haunted bear cup at midnight. Dinner tonight is a cold affair. Flatbread, dried meat, and river water filtered through someone's old sock. It tastes exactly like you expect, but it fills your belly, and right now, that's the only job that matters. Someone starts singing quietly, a lullaby, oddly gentle. It floats over the river like mist. You don't recognize the words, but the melody is familiar. You think your mother might have sung it once, or maybe you just want that to be true. Memory gets slippery out here, like fish. Further down the ship, two men are arguing softly over a comb carved from bone. They think it's cursed. One claims it's why his hairline's retreating faster than the Saxons. The other says it's just age. Neither wants to use it now. You offer to throw it into the river. They say that might offend the spirits. You quietly place it under a sack of onions. Problem solved. Historians still debate whether Viking raiders saw themselves as exiles or explorers, whether they felt pride or just necessity. You suspect the answer lies somewhere in the space between theft and longing, between the villages they left behind and the ones they never dared to build. You remember a story from your childhood about a man who sailed west until he reached the edge of the world. He looked down and saw all the stars reflected in the sea, and for a moment, he didn't know which way was up. You think you understand him now. The boat rocks gently beneath you. The water glimmers faintly, catching the moon's reflection and breaking it into 1,000 drifting shards. It's like sailing through a sky it forgot how to be above you. You lie back, let your eyes close, let the current carry you, and as you drift toward sleep, you think not of fire or gold or battle cries, but of the red wool in your bag, of the carved post with the bulging eyes, of the quiet before the bell, of the woman kneeling by the bucket, or the bear with its crooked grin. Tomorrow will come, with shouts and smoke, and more miles to row. But for now, the river is still, and you are quiet with it. The river narrows by morning. The trees draw even closer, elms and ash and willow, leaning like they're eavesdropping. Sunlight filters through the canopy in long golden stripes that shimmer on the water like runes you can't quite read. You sit upright slowly, cloak slipping off your shoulders, the cool breath of dawn brushing your cheeks like a whisper that won't repeat itself. The others stir behind you. Some stretch and groan like old planks. Others fumble with gear or poke what's left of last night's bread. One man has somehow lost a boot in his sleep and is blaming the river for trickery. No one offers him much sympathy. This is not a boot-sensitive crew. Ahead, a wooden footbridge comes into view, crooked, moss-covered, and likely held together by the ancient magic of sheer stubbornness. Beyond it, smoke once again. Not panic smoke, hearth smoke. Another settlement. This one's inland, more permanent. Maybe even organized. Harold gives a low whistle, the sort of signal that means, get ready, but without the drama. You shift your weight forward. The oars dip in, smooth and quiet now. No more splashing. No talking. Just water and breath and nerves. As you glide under the bridge, you notice symbols carved into its uprights, simple things, spirals, circles, a crude bird. You've seen them before in other villages. Protective wards, most likely. They're meant to keep things out. You wonder if they ever work. The village is sturdier than the last. Stone walls around some of the buildings. Tiled roofs in places. A well in the center square, with buckets lined neatly around it, like they're waiting to be filled. There's even a small chapel. Its bell tower low but proud. This isn't just a cluster of huts. This is home to someone. And here you come. A dripping, hungry, half-dreaming crew of river-battered men, each one carrying something sharp and desperate. You move in fast, again. The usual dance. Shock, shouting, resistance. A young man throws a pot at you. It misses. A woman swings a broom like it's a sword. You duck. Somewhere nearby, Bjorn is roaring like a bear again, though it sounds more like sneezing. But something's different this time. The villagers aren't running. They're fighting. With stones. With sticks. With loud, terrifying conviction. You weren't expecting this. You falter just for a second. A child bites your wrist. You are very much not proud of how loudly you yell. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some Norse stories, biting someone in battle was considered a kind of curse, a transfer of bad luck. You glance at the tooth marks on your arm and wonder what exactly was passed along. The fight doesn't last long. It's not that they weren't brave. It's just that bravery doesn't stop axes. You don't stay long. Harold calls for withdrawal faster than usual. He doesn't like the odds here. You gather what you can. A silver pin shaped like a dog, a basket of smoked fish, a half-burned candle that smells like lavender. Odd souvenirs. But you've learned to keep your hands moving when your heart wants to freeze. Historians still debate whether Viking raiders made distinctions between plunder and punishment, whether some villages were spared for political reasons, or others struck harder out of spite. You don't know. You just know your legs were shaking when you left this one. Back on the river, the crew is quiet. Bjorn has a fresh bruise across his jaw. You have a fish scale stuck to your eyebrow. No one laughs. The current picks up, carrying you away. The bridge slips back into the trees. The symbols fade from view, but you feel them on your skin. The sky grows darker by afternoon, not with clouds, but with mood. You sail without speaking for a long time. The river widens slightly, its surface smooth as hammered silver. Even the birds seem hesitant to make a sound. You sit near the stern now, sharpening your axe out of habit, not necessity. The blade catches the light, briefly blinding you. You squint, irritated, then chuckle dryly. That's about right. Harald hasn't said much since the last village. He stares forward, jaw tight, like he's trying to row the whole ship with sheer will. You've seen him quiet before, but this is different. He looks like a man measuring the weight of his own shadow. You pull out the silver dog pin. It's heavier than it looks. The eyes are detailed, almost sad. You turn it over in your fingers. It belonged to someone who wore it every day, someone who probably had a name for it. You call it Ghost Town. You attach it to your cloak. Lunch is dry bread and nothing else. You chew in silence. The taste is unmemorable, the act mechanical. Food is no longer about joy. It's fuel, a slow, unsatisfying trickle of survival. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Viking warriors fasted before battle, believing it sharpened the senses. Others thought it was punishment from the gods, doled out for insufficient bravery. You wonder if skipping meals voluntarily would impress Odin, or just annoy him. A splash draws your attention. A seal bobs briefly beside the ship, stares directly at you, then dives. You get the sense it knows something. About you, about this river, about the path ahead. Historians still debate whether Viking raiders believed in omens the way saga writers claim. You're not sure about the seal, but when the wind shifts and carries the smell of smoke again, this time thick, heavy, real, you sit up straighter. That's no hearth fire. The crew stiffens, faces turn. You round a bend, and there it is, another village. But this one is already burning. Not your fire. Someone else has been here. Flames twist up from rooftops. Shapes move through the smoke. People running, others chasing. You recognize none of them? A different crew? Locals fighting each other? No time to wonder. Harald raises his hand. The ship slows. You all stare. This isn't your raid. This is something else. The river, once again, holds its breath. The longship drifts to a halt, tethered to a low branch, with rope that creaks like it resents the job. No one speaks. Not even Bjorn, who usually has something to say about smoke, how it smells like home, or supper, or his uncle's beard. But this fire? This one feels wrong. Thick, black, oily. It smells like tar and panic. Not the ritual, victorious smoke of your own work, but chaos left behind, unchecked. You all sit, still as statues, watching the flames devour what looks like a much larger settlement. This wasn't just a fishing village. This was a small town, fortified, somewhat, built to last, not built for this. The scale of the damage is immediate. Whatever hit this place didn't come quietly or carefully. This was no surgical strike. This was rage or desperation, or maybe just cruelty done in scale. Figures dart between buildings, some fleeing, others pursuing. You can't see clearly, but they move like they're not afraid to be seen. Raiders, not locals, not farmers. You can tell by the way they carry their weapons, and by the fact that one of them just hurled a torch through a second-story window with an enthusiasm that screams professional. And here you are, a raiding party watching another raiding party do your job. A strange twist. Like showing up at your own funeral and realizing someone else already gave the eulogy, and it was poorly done. Harold squints toward the blaze. Too late, he mutters, mostly to himself. They got here first. You glance at the others. Some look annoyed. A few look relieved. Bjorn looks like he's doing math. You are too. What happens when two groups of desperate, hungry men meet in a burning town with limited silver and an unlimited capacity for grudges? Harold makes a call. We wait. The boat is drawn back into cover. You anchor further behind a fringe of reeds and skeletal trees, half submerged. The smoke keeps rising. One man suggests offering prayers to ward off the smell. Another suggests lighting something pleasant to cover it. No one has anything pleasant. You chew on a sliver of pine bark. It tastes like regret. You watch the fire devour. It takes hours. The heat is patient. The flames shift from furious to idle, like a beast settling after a kill. Even from this distance, you can see the orange glow flicker off the river surface like a sick reflection. Obscure cultural tidbit. It was considered bad luck among some Norse crews to plunder what another band had already sacked. especially if they hadn't left offerings to the spirits first. No one wants a cursed spindle or a haunted spoon. You suspect this whole village might be cursed by dinner time, but you're also starving. When the fires begin to die and the smoke thins, curiosity overrides superstition. You row in slowly, a few oars at a time, like you're approaching a wild animal mid-meal. The other crew is gone. No bodies, no voices, just scorch marks and a deeply unpleasant smell of wet wood and cooked things. Everything is coated in ash. You step onto the blackened dock, half expecting it to collapse. It doesn't, yet. You move through what remains. A chair still stands beside a ruined fire pit. A shoe lies alone in the mud, its mate nowhere in sight. The silence is louder than any raid you've ever heard. Further in, you find oddities. A melted candle still upright, unbroken dishes on a shelf, while the rest of the house is gutted, as if something moved through quickly and deliberately. Not looting, searching. In the chapel, what's left of it, you find no cross. The altar is gone, but someone painted symbols on the back wall in charcoal. You don't recognize them. Neither does Harold. Bjorn whispers they look pre-Christian, which is just Bjorn's way of saying, I don't like it, and it might eat me. Historians still debate whether Viking crews ever clashed mid-raid. Some say it was common. Others claim honor dictated boundaries. You suspect it was less about honor and more about who had the bigger crew and worse manners. As you return to the ship, you take one last look back. The fire's out. The wind has changed. The town is gone, and whatever passed through it has vanished without a trace, except in you. You carry some of it now. Harold doesn't speak. He just shoves the boat off the dock. The river closes behind you. By nightfall, the river widens again. You move quickly now. No more drifting. The air smells cleaner, cooler, but the smoke still clings to your cloak, like a memory that didn't ask permission to follow you home. You can feel it in your beard, under your fingernails, woven into your tunic's seams. You don't bother trying to shake it off. Some days just leave marks. You sit near the stern, sharpening your axe. Not because it needs it, because your hands need something to do besides shake. The sound is steady, soothing in its own way. A scratch, a breath, a rhythm. It reminds you that you're still here, still in control of something, even if that something is just a piece of iron and your own illusion of preparedness. Bjorn is quiet, which is unnatural enough that someone finally asks if he's sick. He just shakes his head and mutters something about bad signs and black fire. He pulls his cloak tighter around his shoulders and chews on a piece of driftwood like it might fight off demons. You don't interrupt. Whatever helps him sleep. Dinner is cold, dry, and joyless. Fish again. Bread again. Everyone eats like the food might explain what happened. It doesn't. It never does. Harold doesn't eat at all. He sits cross-legged at the bow, face unreadable, the only movement the occasional twitch in his jaw. You find yourself staring at the water. Its surface is glassy, too smooth. It reflects the moon with such clarity that you could mistake it for a second sky, a colder one. The thought unnerves you, and you look away. Obscure cultural tidbit. In Norse belief, a mirror image of the world existed in the water, a hidden realm below where everything was reversed, including fate. Some thought drowning was not death, but a crossing. You don't test that theory, but you do keep your limbs firmly inside the ship. Someone starts humming again. Not a song this time, just a low, tuneless sound, almost like a chant. It blends with the wind and the lapping of water against the hull. You're not sure who started it. Eventually, you're not sure it even started on the boat. It just exists. The mist returns, this time heavier. It rolls low along the water's surface, thick enough that your oars vanish into it as you row. Everything softens. Shapes blur. Sound dampens. The world narrows down to your breath and the steady creak of timber. You glance down at the bear cub. It's still with you. Still oddly warm, as if holding on to some internal ember. You press it to your lips, not to drink, just to feel something real against your skin. The grain of the wood. The flaw in the carving. The steady, silent reminder that someone made this. Historians still debate whether Viking crews believed in fate or free will, whether they thought their paths were written in the stars or carved with each swing of a blade. You used to think the answer was obvious. Now, not so much. Maybe the stars are real. Maybe they're just polite lies we tell to keep the fog away. You lie down eventually. The deck is hard. Your bones are tired. The mist curls over you like a second blanket, wet and cool and heavier than it looks. You listen for owls, for wolves, for the sound of something else in the fog. Instead, you hear only the river, and it's still moving. The fog has teeth. Not literal ones, of course, but it presses in around the longship with such quiet insistence that you start to feel chewed at by damp, by silence, by the not quite seen. Everything is hushed. Even the creak of the hull feels muted, like the mist is swallowing sound. You breathe through your nose, slowly, half convinced even your breath might echo too loudly. No birdsong, no splashes, no bugs. The river, usually full of petty noises and fluttering lives, is blank. The only sound left is your own heartbeat, which suddenly seems louder than it has any right to be. You sit up slowly, your limbs cold and heavy, the dew clinging to your skin like second thoughts. Visibility is maybe 20 paces. If you're generous, the world feels wrapped in wool, and not the good kind. More like the scratchy blanket your aunt made that smells like onions and mildew. The others are awake too, sitting upright with that same expression you've seen after battle. That look that says, something's wrong, but I haven't decided what yet. Everyone blinks too much. No one coughs or clears their throat. There's an agreement, without a word, not to disrupt this strange hush. Harold finally speaks, his voice low and tight. We've passed this bend already. You look around, the curve of the river, the leaning tree, the half-sunken log that looks vaguely like a horse that gave up halfway through being a horse. You swear you've seen that waterlogged stump at least twice already, maybe 3 times. He's right. You've been here before, and the river hasn't changed direction. There's a long pause as that settles over the crew. Then Bjorn stands up and announces, "This is why I never trust rivers after midnight." He sits back down, adds nothing further. Everyone accepts this as valid logic. You try not to panic. It's just mist, just water. It can't trick you. But then again, you've grown up on stories of rivers that loop and twist and bend time, of fogs that lead you in circles, of boats that row for days only to arrive back at their own anchor. And stories, as you've come to understand, are often just warnings no one took seriously the first time. Obscure cultural tidbit. Norse tales often spoke of the Oliviger, primordial rivers that existed near the edge of the world. Crossing them could mean rebirth, death, madness, or waking up with antlers. The stories varied. None of them ended well, especially for the guy with the antlers. Harold orders the oars down. You row slowly, carefully, every man watching the banks for a landmark that hasn't already greeted you like a passive-aggressive neighbor. Then, finally, something different. A figure, just standing at the edge of the mist, barely visible through the fog. Tall, motionless, too still to be natural. It doesn't move. It doesn't wave. It doesn't even blink. It simply watches. The kind of stillness that makes your stomach tighten. No one breathes. You blink, and it's gone. No sound, no splash. Just not there anymore. Bjorn says nothing, but starts quietly braiding something from reeds and twine. A charm, maybe. Maybe a hobby. You don't ask. You don't want to know which. You row faster now. Not running, but definitely not lingering. And then, as suddenly as it began, the mist begins to lift. It doesn't drift away. It retracts, like it's being pulled back. You can almost hear it sigh. Thin rays of morning light filter down, warming your back. The fog peels away from the riverbanks, like a curtain drawn aside. There's a village up ahead, not burning, not empty, not surrounded by ominous figures. Just a village. You exchange looks with the crew. No one says what you're all thinking. We weren't meant to see that, but we did. You all exhale at once, like being allowed to breathe again. You arrive mid-morning. The village is modest. Wooden homes, smoke curling up from thatched roofs. Goats bleating like they've just remembered their existence is funny. But there's no alarm, no fleeing. Just a few cautious stares from children, and an old man sharpening a blade that's definitely more rust than metal. You pull ashore slowly, warily, hands near weapons but not drawn. You haven't drawn steel since before the burned town, and something about today makes you want to keep it that way. Harald approaches first, his cloak still damp from fog. He greets them in the local tongue. He's better with it than most. The elder man nods, gestures to the rest of the crew. You're invited, not warmly, but not with arrows either. Inside the village, things are normal, uncomfortably so. No signs of war, raiding, or ominous symbols painted in pig blood. Just daily life. Women baking, men repairing tools, a child dropping a bucket and pretending they meant to. It feels like someone wrote Peaceful Hamlet in a script and no one bothered to add any other dialogue. They feed you bread, goat cheese, a stew that tastes of roots and something you can't identify but eat anyway. It's the best thing you've had in weeks. You eat 2 bowls before realizing you haven't looked over your shoulder in 10 full minutes. That's how good it is. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some Norse coastal regions, it was tradition to offer food to passing raiders in exchange for peace. A strange logic. Feed the wolves so they don't bite. It didn't always work, but when it did, it saved generations. You sit on a low bench outside one of the huts, warming your hands over a small fire. A woman offers you a carved spoon and a bowl of stew. You thank her in your broken, mismatched dialect. She smiles. It's small, but real. You look around at the village. Everything is tidy. Too tidy, maybe. There are flowers strung above doorways. A scarecrow with polished buttons for eyes. Children laughing and running past goats. It's lovely. And you are a man with soot under his nails and a bear-shaped cup filled with river ghosts. You feel like a shadow in the sunlight. Bjorn, of course, eats 5 bowls of stew and challenges the village smith to an arm-wrestling match. He loses, laughs, asks for a rematch. The smith obliges, loses. They call it even. It's the most diplomatic Bjorn has ever been. A few of your crewmen are already napping in the grass, boots off, arms behind their heads like boys in a summer field. One of them is softly snoring. Another is carving something into the haft of his axe, a flower, maybe, or a spiral. The hours pass strangely. No one mentions the burned village. No one mentions the mist. You wonder if they know. If they've seen things too. If they're pretending they haven't, because naming it would give it form. The sun begins to sink and the shadows lengthen. You walk toward the edge of the village, just to stretch your legs. The well catches your eye. Something about the way it's positioned, a little too far from the homes, half shaded, half watching. You step closer. The stones are old, older than the huts, probably. Slick with moss, worn from hands and rope and time. Inside, barely visible in the last light, you spot carvings scratched into the stone. Not recent, not decorative, familiar. They're the same symbols you saw in the burned chapel. Circles, lines, marks that aren't words but seem to want to be. You don't mention it. You step a little farther from the well, just in case. The firelight calls you back toward the others, toward warmth, toward sleep. You look over your shoulder one last time. The well is still there, quiet, watching nothing in particular. For now, you sleep beneath a roof for the first time in weeks. A simple one, wooden beams, thatch overhead, smoke curling from a hearth that hasn't gone out in years. You lie on a straw mat near the wall, next to a man who smells like fermented onions and another who snores like he's choking on a bear. But it's dry, it's warm, and the firelight flickers against the beams in a way that almost feels like a lullaby. Your boots are near the door. Your axe is under your arm. You sleep with one eye open, metaphorically, if not literally. After what the river showed you, you're not quite sure whether dreams are safer than waking. You wake before dawn, out of habit more than need. The room is still dim, painted in those soft gray tones that make everything feel like it might be underwater. You stretch your arms slowly, quietly, and pad outside into the crisp morning air. The village is silent, the kind of silence that's whole, not broken by birds or breath. Mist lingers, but just the ordinary kind now, the gentle veil that fields wear before the sun comes to burn it off. You walk to the well. No one else is there. The stones are slick with dew. The same symbols are there, etched deep, older than the village. You reach out and touch them with your fingertips, and for the briefest moment, the stone feels warm, like breath held just beneath the surface. Then a rooster crows. The world resumes. You rejoin the others for breakfast. More bread, more cheese. Apples this time, small, tart, but somehow perfect. You eat slowly, gratefully. Bjorn is already asking the village girl about her weaving techniques, which sounds like a pickup line, but incredibly is not. Harold gathers the crew and speaks softly. We leave at midday. No one protests. You've all had a moment to rest. That's enough. Too much calm, and you'll start to remember what's waiting downriver. As the sun climbs, you help push the ship back into the water. The villagers wave, cautiously. You wave back. One child throws a handful of wildflowers into the river as your boat pulls away. You don't know why, but it feels like a blessing. Or maybe a goodbye. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some Norse fishing communities, flower offerings were tossed into rivers to appease water spirits, or to mourn those who never returned from them. Sometimes both. The wind picks up. The oars go down. You begin again. No one talks about the mist, or the burned town, or the figure at the river's edge. Not aloud. But you feel it in the way your crew rose today, not with fear, but with caution, with reverence, like men who've been noticed by something they don't understand. Harold steers with one hand. In the other, he holds something, a charm made of reeds. You're not sure when he started believing in charms, but you don't ask. The bear cup rests in your satchel. The silver dog pin gleams in the sun. Somewhere, deep in the folds of your cloak, you still carry that scrap of red wool. You're not sure why, but every time you think about tossing it, you keep it. The river widens ahead. The trees fall away. And you, Viking, raider, riverwalker, fog witness, row on. Now the water is calm again. The long ship glides gently across a river made of light and shadow. The sun has dipped low behind you, casting the world in that quiet golden hour where time seems to slow and every ripple on the surface looks like it's whispering something. You sit at the stern, leaning back, letting the breeze thread through your hair and across your face. It smells of pine and smoke and something distant you can't name. Maybe something older than the trees. Maybe something waiting beyond the next bend. The oars are still now. No need to paddle. The river pulls you forward on its own, like it knows where you're going, like it's known for a while. The crew dozes. One by one, heads fall forward, eyes flutter shut. Even Bjorn is quiet now, hands folded on his chest like he's dreaming of stew and arm wrestling. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and in the dark behind your eyelids, you see the fire again. The village, the chapel, the well. You feel the mist drift through your ribs like it lives there now. But it doesn't frighten you anymore. It just is. The way rivers are. The way stories are. You breathe deep, the kind of breath you only take when you're safe enough to sleep and tired enough to forget why you shouldn't. And as the stars blink awake overhead, as the long ship drifts ever deeper into the twilight of some uncharted shore, you let yourself go quiet too. No axe, no boots, no watch to keep, just the river and the long, slow pull of dreams. The desert breathes slowly beneath your feet. You don't notice it at first. It's too still, too broad, too quietly ancient. But once you tune in, it feels like you're standing on the back of something vast and dreaming. The air is dry and still, warm even before the sun fully arrives, and the sky above you is a blank canvas waiting for time to sketch across it in dust and silence. You're in southern Peru, standing at the edge of an empty plain known as the Pampa Colorada, the Red Plain. It doesn't look red, not yet. More like faded copper and sand that forgot how to glisten. But give it time. The sun will turn it into fire soon enough. Your boots crunch over pebbles that haven't moved in centuries. Every step kicks up a ghost of dust that probably remembers more than you do. You squint into the distance. The land stretches endlessly, like someone forgot to stop drawing it. Except there are drawings, and you're walking across one. It's hard to tell from the ground. Just a faint groove in the stones beneath you, as if a giant had dragged their finger across the surface and left a mark that no wind dared erase. You're standing in the beak of a bird, a really, really big bird. A bird that's longer than a football field and still manages to look smug about it. This is Nazca Land, and this is one of the Nazca Lines. You probably won't make it through this day, not without a sunburn, a nose full of sand, and about 30 different theories swirling in your brain about what this place means. But that's the fun part. Before we go further, take a moment, if you're still awake, to gently like and subscribe. It helps us keep the dust off the channel and the stories flowing. And if you're listening from somewhere sandy, strange, or just quietly curious, drop your location and your local time in the comments below. We love seeing where the dreamers gather. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. The land stretches around you, flat and still, but laced with secrets. 100 figures, dozens of miles long, all scraped into the soil by hands long gone, with meanings still debated under moonlight. You walk further into the wingspan of something ancient, and the morning light begins to lift. The sun crests the edge of the sky like it's trying not to wake the mountains. Light spills across the plain in soft, golden waves, revealing the full breadth of the design you've been walking through. It's a bird, some say a hummingbird. Others say it's more like a stylized crane. Either way, it's huge. So large, in fact, that the only way to truly see it is from hundreds of feet above, in the air. Which leads to the first big question. How did they make something this big, this perfect, without ever seeing the full image themselves? No drones, no planes, no casual hot air balloon joyrides in the 1st century. Just rocks, ropes, a whole lot of time, and evidently some incredible patience. Archaeologists believe the Nazca people began making these geoglyphs around 500 BCE and continued the work for nearly 1,000 years. That's a long time to play desert, connect the dots. The lines themselves are created by removing the reddish-brown top layer of pebbles to reveal the pale earth underneath. No tools needed beyond a stick, some careful measurements, and the kind of motivation usually reserved for modern group projects and ancient religious devotion. You pass through the tail feathers now, long, precise lines that stretch far past what your eyes can fully follow. The breeze picks up, dry and sleepy, brushing your skin like it's reminding you not to touch anything. The desert doesn't erase quickly, but it does remember when you mess things up. Obscure cultural tidbit. Local legend says that walking across the lines without asking permission from the earth spirits can cause you to get lost, even on a perfectly flat plain with no trees or obstacles. It's one of those just don't test it kind of warnings, like ignoring a goat with a human stare. You pause for water. The canteen is warm but welcome. As you sip, a glint catches your eye, a small black stone embedded in the soil. Obsidian. There's not much of it out here, but when it shows up, it stands out like a dropped pearl in a bowl of sand. Some believe these stones were part of ceremonial offerings, left during processions that followed the very lines you now walk. Historians still debate whether the Nazca Lines were meant to be walked at all, or if they were strictly visual, celestial billboards for the gods, perhaps, or sacred maps pointing to water, fertility, or the stars themselves. You bend down and run your hand along the groove. It's shallow, maybe 4 inches deep, but it holds a kind of quiet power, like a whisper etched in stone. A sentence that's waited 1,500 years to be read. The heat rises slowly, curling up from the plain like breath from a sleeping animal. You step out of the bird's wing and into a spiral. Not a shape you were expecting. But then again, nothing about this place is what you expect. The lines cross and bend. Some form geometric shapes. Others twist into monkeys, whales, spiders. One of them, strangely, looks like a man with upraised arms and round eyes. Locals call him the astronaut. You're not sure what he's reaching for, but the desert always seems to point upward. The spiral leads you nowhere in particular, and maybe that's the point. You step out of it like you've just completed a very quiet, very dusty dance. The ground here is the same as everywhere else, flat, baked, and scattered with rust-colored stones. But the spiral lingers in your mind, curling behind your eyes like a riddle you can't quite phrase. The next figure comes into view slowly. It doesn't jump out, it settles in. At first, it looks like just another set of lines scratched through the soil. Then, step by step, it gathers itself into form. 8 legs, a round body, exaggerated feelers. A spider, long, lean, and unnervingly elegant for something that lives in sand. This one is one of the most famous. Nearly 150 feet long, and somehow drawn in a single continuous line without lifting the pen, or whatever passed for a pen, in a time when people were drawing across literal miles of landscape. Scientists and historians agree that this figure likely held religious or symbolic significance. Some point to its uncanny resemblance to a specific type of Amazonian spider, one not native to the Nazca region. Which raises another question. How did the Nazca know what it looked like? Were there trade routes? Cultural exchanges? Did someone bring back a really confusing souvenir? You walk along the edge of one of the spider's legs. It's as straight as if someone used a ruler the length of a city block. Some researchers have suggested the Nazca used stakes and rope to create straight lines and shapes at scale. Others say they must have had help. Maybe a lookout on a hill. Maybe someone really tall. Or maybe something even higher. That's where the theories start to wander off the road a bit. Obscure cultural tidbit. One 17th century Spanish monk claimed that the native people had paths of worship that stretched across the desert, used not for travel, but for walking in circles during specific holy days, a kind of sacred pacing that made sense only to this guy. You take a moment to try pacing a leg of the spider. You imagine a slow procession, People with offerings, maybe humming or chanting, tracing the same path you're walking now. You wonder if they felt like they were part of something they couldn't fully see. Historians still debate whether the spider figure was meant to invoke rain or fertility, or if it marked a celestial event. Some argue that its leg lines up with the rise of a particular constellation. Others think it's just a very large, very committed doodle. Either way, it's been here longer than most ideas stick around. The sun climbs higher. Your hat, if you were wise enough to bring one, is starting to feel like a lifeline. If not, your forehead is becoming an archaeological site of its own. In the distance, a low platform juts out of the plain. A trapezoid-shaped mound made of packed earth and stone. You walk toward it, slowly. The heat encourages slowness. It's one of those natural negotiations. Either move like molasses, or become molasses. The platform is one of many scattered around the Nazca region. Some are tall enough to see a portion of the lines. Not all. Just a taste. From here, you can glimpse a tail, a beak, a line that runs so far into the horizon, it stops being a line and starts being an idea. And there, in the shimmer of heat waves, you swear you see a figure walking across the far edge of the plain. But when you blink, it's gone. You climb down from the platform carefully, brushing your hands over the dry stone surface. The edges are worn smooth, not from tourists like you, but from centuries of wind that has the patience to file anything down given time. As your feet return to the plain, your path crosses one of the strangest figures yet. It's not an animal, not a shape you recognize from nature. It's a pair of long parallel lines that end in what looks like a runway, or the outline of an arrowhead, or, depending on who you ask, a landing strip. Ah yes, we've arrived at that part of the Nazca Lines discussion. In the 1960s, Swiss author Erich von Däniken popularized the theory that these lines were created as messages to extraterrestrials. Giant drawings, glyphs only visible from the air, meant to communicate with beings above. He suggested that the Nazca people were visited by ancient astronauts and, awestruck by flying machines, began carving symbols into the earth to attract them back. It's a charming theory, also one with zero actual evidence. Still, the idea caught fire in pop culture. Even today, the notion of the Nazca Lines as alien landing zones shows up in documentaries, books, memes, and wide-eyed YouTube videos featuring dramatic music and 12-minute introductions. Historians, for the most part, roll their eyes. But some admit, quietly, with a sigh, that certain shapes do look aerodynamic, or symbolic in a way we haven't fully grasped yet. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some Andean myths, the sky is not just a ceiling. It's a realm of beings who influence weather, earth, and fate. Some stars have names, some mountains have spirits, and some rivers are said to fall upward before they return to rain. So the idea of messages to the sky isn't entirely modern nonsense. It just comes in different packaging. You follow one of the longer trapezoids now. The groove is so straight, it almost seems mechanical. And yet it was made by hand, stone by stone, over years. The stones removed were piled carefully along the edge, forming borders. They didn't just scrape away, they sculpted. As you walk, you begin to understand something strange. These figures aren't just designs, they're experiences. You have to be in them to feel them, to move with them, like walking a labyrinth with your whole body. Historians still debate whether the lines were calendars, pathways, water maps, or ceremonial grounds. Maybe all of them. Maybe something else. Maybe they weren't made to be understood. Maybe they were made to be remembered. The wind picks up again. This time it's warm, and it carries the scent of something faintly sweet. Dried herbs, maybe, or flowers from the distant mountains that dared to drift down. You pause. Off in the far distance, where the plain begins to rise toward the foothills, another figure waits. Less famous, less photographed. A whale. In the middle of the desert. You blink, laugh a little, then start walking. Because, of course, there's a whale out here. You walk toward the whale because, well, what else does one do when they see a 200-foot-long sea creature etched into a desert? You don't question it too hard. Not here. Not where everything already feels like the inside of a dream that forgot to end. The desert doesn't care if your questions make sense. It just offers its silence and waits to see if you flinch first. The figure is stretched across a sloping patch of plain, and as you draw near, it stops being theoretical. It becomes there. A thick line curves into a fin. Another swirls into the outline of an open mouth, more dragon than dolphin. The closer you get, the clearer it becomes. It's not a perfect depiction of a whale. It's the idea of one. Memory, maybe. Or myth. You kneel down and brush a finger along the edge of the shape. The stones here have been cleared so cleanly, and even after centuries, the groove still whispers its presence. The groove is shallow, deliberate, and strong enough to survive 1,000 desert summers without forgetting what it is. This isn't decoration. It's devotion. And yet, the absurdity is impossible to ignore. A sea creature, here, 1,000 feet above sea level, miles from the coast, surrounded by nothing but scrub and sand and the vague smell of overheated boots. If you squint just right, you can almost hear the desert chuckle at the irony. Obscure cultural tidbit. Early Nazca burial sites have been found with fish remains, ocean shells, and bits of coral, carefully arranged among the offerings. Some archaeologists think these were symbols of prosperity, fertility, or perhaps memories of a water-rich origin story. Others wonder if the Nazca believed the ocean lived underground and whales were its messengers. You sit beside the whale's tail and stare at the sky. For a moment, the heat shimmer blurs the air above the desert and turns the blue above into a wavy mirage. You squint and half expect the whale to rise from the plain like a ghost, arcing through the haze as if it's just been resting this whole time. And for the record, if it does, you're not sure whether you'd run or applaud. Historians still debate whether these geoglyphs were made all at once or over generations, whether they reflect a unified belief system or a slow accumulation of sacred graffiti. There's evidence for both. The whale, for example, is older than some of the animals farther inland. Some of its edges have faded, but they haven't disappeared. Because nothing disappears out here. It just waits to be noticed. You glance behind you. The spider's far off now. The bird is gone from view, but they're still there, holding their shapes, holding their silence. The wind brushes past again, warm, full of dust and distance. You think of the Nazca artist who started this whale. One line at a time, one stone moved, one breath held, one message sent. To whom? To what? You stand, dust off your knees, and start walking again. There's more to find. More that doesn't make sense in the best possible way. You leave the whale behind like a forgotten dream, its lines slowly disappearing into the folds of the desert, as if the earth is reclaiming it with every step you take. Ahead, the landscape shifts again. The open plain begins to buckle slightly, forming soft gullies and waves beneath your feet. They're not dramatic, just enough to make you feel like you're walking on something that's thinking. Eventually, the ground settles into a path. Not a modern one, not carved by tires or shoes, but a subtle trench, carefully lined with stones that look just a little too orderly to be random. You follow it out of instinct, or maybe just because it feels like an invitation that doesn't need words. And then you see it. A spiral, descending into the ground like a corkscrew made of stone and memory. A puccio. The Nazca weren't just artists with a flair for scale. They were engineers, and they built their most impressive creations underground. You walk to the edge of the spiral and begin your descent. The stones are firm beneath your boots, surprisingly well placed, considering they've weathered 1,000 years of heat, wind, and the occasional curious goat. The air cools as you move downward, and the noise of the plane, what little there is, fades. It's like slipping into a hidden room beneath the world. At the bottom, you find what you came for. Water. Still flowing. Still alive. It gathers in a shaded pool, protected from the sun and dust. You crouch beside it. Dip your fingers in. It's cold, remarkably cold, as if it remembers a time before all this heat, before all these questions. Obscure cultural tidbit. The pukios are so ingeniously designed that even modern hydrologists have struggled to fully explain how they work. Some believe they function like a system of subterranean wind tunnels, using air pressure to push water from the aquifer into the open spiral. Others say the spiral simply allows maintenance crews to reach deep into the earth for repairs. Because yes, even sacred desert plumbing needs upkeep. You rest beside the water, thinking about how long this system has endured, how it served crops, villages, and ceremonies, all without pumps, pipes, or electricity. The Nazca didn't just live in the desert. They tamed it, carefully, with respect. Not with brute force, but with patience and pattern and the occasional spiral. The wind returns as you climb out, brushing your shoulders like a parent checking you for fever. The plain stretches before you again, and something new rises in the distance. A low hill, a long slope, and beyond it, another figure. 2 hands, one with 5 fingers, one with 3. You don't know why. And that's the best part. Historians still debate whether the 3-fingered hand was intentional or symbolic, or simply the result of erosion. Or maybe it was a joke. Maybe one Nazca artisan slipped up, then confidently told everyone it was part of the design. Who would argue? The lines are still here. The hand still points. And the story, whatever it was, is still working. You walk toward it now, boots kicking up the dust of old spirals and even older intentions. The desert doesn't give answers, but it offers excellent questions. You crest the gentle rise, and there they are, etched plainly into the desert floor like giant handprints pressed into wet sand and left to harden for 1,000 years. 2 hands, one open and wide, with 5 perfect fingers splayed outward. The other stops at 3. No thumb, no pinky. Just 3 long fingers reaching out like a signal or a secret. The kind of gesture you might make if you are counting very slowly, or trying to win a very strange game of rock, paper, scissors. You're not entirely sure who wins in that version. Possibly the desert. You walk slowly around the figures. The grooves are as deliberate as ever, just deep enough to catch the light, just wide enough to make you stop. The 5-fingered hand looks almost welcoming. The 3-fingered one, less so. It doesn't feel wrong exactly. It feels pointed, like it was drawn that way on purpose, with a meaning you can't quite decode. Some researchers suggest the missing fingers represent injury, or deformity, or even supernatural transformation. Others wonder if it symbolizes reduction, taking something whole and making it sacred by subtraction. Or maybe it was just a design quirk, a moment of stylistic flair from a long-gone geoglyph artist who decided 5 fingers was so last century. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some local Andean folktales, certain spirits or ancient gods were said to mark themselves by appearing with fewer than 5 fingers. A cosmic signature, perhaps, or a reminder that perfection is not always symmetrical. You sit in the palm of the 3-fingered hand and rest. The ground is warm beneath you, almost soft from centuries of sunlight. You close your eyes for a moment and let the stillness soak in. No footsteps, no birds. Just wind over ancient stone and the kind of silence that feels like a decision. You think about hands not just as tools or symbols, but as records. They leave marks. They build. They destroy. They wave. They reach. This pair, pressed into the earth, feel like an echo of all those things at once. Historians still debate whether these glyphs were drawn by a single cultural generation or layered over time, with symbols added as beliefs evolved. One hand may have come first, they say. The other may be a response, maybe a correction, maybe a prayer. You look toward the horizon again. It always pulls you. Somewhere past the hands is the hummingbird, if the map is to be trusted. But here, in this moment, you rest inside a symbol made by people who once stood exactly where you're sitting now, staring at their own hands, wondering, perhaps, what they'd leave behind. By midday, the light shifts again, more vertical now, more aggressive. Shadows shrink to little puddles beneath your feet, and the air grows so still it feels staged. The kind of stillness you'd expect on a museum floor, or in a cathedral where no one breathes too loudly. You walk with your head down, following the faint trail of flattened pebbles that cuts through the plain like a low whisper. Eventually, the hum of heat resolves into something recognizable, another figure. This one is lean, compact, and symmetrical. The hummingbird. It doesn't leap out at you. It settles into your field of vision, like something you've always known was there, even if you only just remembered it. A bird, mid-hover, captured not in motion but in intent, wings wide, tail feathers fanned, beak outstretched with quiet determination. The entire figure is over 300 feet long. It fits neatly into the flatness, its lines straight and confident, like someone planned it all out ahead of time, with more patience than you've ever had for anything. The beak, especially, is striking, long and narrow, drawn like a compass needle pointed due east, not just decorative, purposeful. Some researchers believe it aligns precisely with the rising sun during the December solstice, a bright moment in the desert's coldest season, when light finally returns from the mountains. Obscure cultural tidbit. In ancient Andean myth, hummingbirds were sometimes seen as warriors of light, small, fast, and unstoppable. They were also believed to drink the tears of the sun. You wonder what kind of culture assigns a solar diet to something the size of a thumb. You respect the ambition. You walk slowly along one wing, following the shallow channel carved so long ago. Your steps feel ceremonial, even if you're just moving to avoid a sunstroke. You imagine what it might have been like to walk this figure during a festival, maybe with music, incense, offerings. A procession tracing the line of a bird, too big to fit in the sky. Historians still debate how the Nazca maintained such straight, consistent lines across so much space. Some argue for a system of gridded strings and stakes. Others think there may have been a form of scaled design knowledge we still don't fully understand. A kind of geometry of the sacred. You step carefully across the tail feathers and reach the far edge. From here, looking back, the figure disappears into the land again. You only see fragments. A line here, a curve there. The whole picture only exists in your mind now, or from the sky. That's the trick of the Nazca Lines. They're not made for humans. Not really. Not from this angle. They're messages or monuments best seen by the wind. As you sit in the shadowless heat, your fingers brush a small stone. You pick it up absently. It's dark, heavier than it looks. You flip it once in your palm, then set it down again. No need to take anything from this place. It already gave you something. You turn back to the east, where the hummingbird points. You follow its beak, because whatever it was looking for, you want to see it too. The path east is not marked. It never is. There are no signs in the desert, no helpful arrows or roadside stands selling water and soft hats. Just the occasional line etched into the ground, a path that might be ancient or might be a trick of the light. You learn to walk slowly, to read the stones the way you might read a half-erased note on parchment. The hummingbird fades behind you. Not gone, never gone, but absorbed again into the flatness. A secret briefly whispered, then buried. The wind picks up slightly, carrying a breath of sand across your cheeks. It's not aggressive, just enough to remind you the desert is still awake. You pass another long, straight groove. At first, it looks like a random marking, just another ancient furrow. But then a bend, a sharp, clean angle, and then another. You realize you're inside a figure, once again. This time, it's a trapezoid. Simple, geometric, nothing like the animals and birds you've seen before. Just a wide, flattened triangle, long and sharp at one end. The lines stretch for hundreds of feet, converging slightly, like a runway, or an arrow, or a spotlight. Historians believe these trapezoids may have been ritual walkways, paths for processions, prayers, or perhaps meditative walks that connected people to the gods above. Unlike the animals, the geometric shapes don't depict anything. They do something. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some ancient Peruvian festivals, it was common to walk in silence for hours, eyes forward, feet bare, not as punishment, but as praise. Moving without speaking was considered a form of respect. The land hears better when you don't talk over it. You try it, just for a while. You stop talking to yourself. You slow your breath. You walk the length of the trapezoid with careful steps, following the narrowing end until it comes to a point. You half expect it to open like a doorway. It doesn't. It just ends. But somehow, that feels like enough. From the tip of the trapezoid, the land opens before you. Far ahead, you see the shimmer of heat and stone. But what draws your eye now is something elevated. A hill, not large, not mountainous, but raised enough to be visible from a distance. You make your way toward it. As you walk, you find more lines. Some intersect, some stop abruptly. Some are faint, like faded thoughts. Others still bold, refusing to be erased by time. Together, they weave something just below the surface. A message with no punctuation. You think about the people who made these. Not a few, not once, but generation after generation. Hands scraping stone, eyes squinting at the sun. No reward, no audience. Just the act of making something that could be seen from above. Historians still debate whether the Nazca had high ground to view their work, or if they created the figures with the confidence of people who didn't need to see the whole to trust the shape. Faith by geometry. The hill draws closer. You climb slowly, the ground beneath you crunching with every step. At the top, the wind changes. It's cooler here, higher. You look out and see them. The lines, the shapes, the traces of birds and beasts and roads without names. It's not a perfect view, but it's enough. You see the land as a tapestry. You are standing on the thread. The wind holds you still for a moment, arms at your sides, sweat cooling slowly on your back. The view from the hill isn't panoramic, not like a mountain would offer, but it stretches wide enough to quiet your breath. You don't see the full figures, just parts. Wings without bodies, spirals half hidden by sand. But there's something calming about that. The suggestion that there's always more to the picture than you're allowed to see at once. Behind you, another figure catches your eye. Not on the ground this time. Carved into the slope of a hillside is the so-called astronaut. He's not large by Nazca standards, maybe 100 feet tall, but his shape is unmistakable. A round head, big eyes. An upright figure with one hand raised in what looks like a wave. Or a warning. Or maybe just a really enthusiastic hello. You blink at him. He doesn't blink back. Unlike the other geoglyphs, the astronaut isn't on the plain. He's on a steep slope, visible from the base of the hill or from very specific angles. This has made him a favorite among theorists, especially those who dabble in the extraterrestrial. They point to his bulbous head, his strange proportions, his lone stance, as if he were looking up at the sky, waiting for something to return. Historians, naturally, have other ideas. They suggest he may be a shaman, a deity, or a stylized human ancestor. The raised hand could be ceremonial, or directional, or just an old-school illustration of someone saying, "Look, Ma, no rope grid." Obscure cultural tidbit. In Nazca burial rituals, the dead were often placed in seated positions, with their hands posed in specific gestures, thought to reflect their role in life, or their destination in death. The raised hand might have been a symbol of passage, a farewell gesture to the realm above. You descend the hill and stand at the base of the astronaut figure. It's steeper here, the sand looser, but the outline is sharp. You run your hand over the rocks lining his foot. They're warm from the sun, rough to the touch, and older than any language you speak. He doesn't look imposing. If anything, he looks slightly amused. Historians still debate whether the astronaut was made before or after the other major figures. His style is different, looser, a little more interpretive. One theory suggests he may have been the beginning of a new phase of Nazca art, one cut short by drought, war, or a shifting belief. You sit nearby and rest. The hill shelters you from the worst of the sun now. A small mercy. The sky above is still empty. No clouds, no ships, no cosmic return. But the astronaut keeps watching, and you keep listening. Because sometimes the stories don't speak aloud. They just wait until you're quiet enough to hear them. You rise slowly from your seat near the hillside astronaut, legs stiff, dust clinging to your calves like a souvenir. The wind has settled again, one of those desert silences that makes you wonder if sound has simply been put on pause. A kind of hush that feels less like nothing and more like a prelude, a moment before something almost happens. You glance back at the figure, still waving, still expressionless. Maybe it's not a wave at all. Maybe it's a gesture from a ritual you'll never fully understand. Or maybe, just maybe, the Nazca were making the world's first meme. Something eternal and ambiguous enough to keep people arguing for centuries. You smile, just a little. The descent from the hill is quiet. The slope is loose with old pebbles, and you step carefully, trying not to disturb the ground more than necessary. There's a kind of reverence that comes over you, not from obligation, but from the soft realization that everything here is older than your concept of time. Back on the plain, the air feels different. A bit thicker, maybe, or simply quieter. You walk past a few scattered stones that seem too symmetrical to be random, and before long, you spot the next figure, the monkey. From a distance, it barely registers, just a tangle of curved lines etched into the pale dirt. But as you draw closer, the figure tightens, resolves. The tail alone is worth the walk. A spiral so perfect, it feels less like art and more like a spell. The monkey's body is all sharp elbows and soft loops, its arms bent like it's mid-dance or caught in the act of mischief. There's no face, not really, but something about the posture feels cheeky, defiant. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some early Andean myths, monkeys were said to be the result of humans who got too clever and were turned into trickster animals as a kind of cosmic punishment. Not evil, just too much. The gods, apparently, had a limit for sass. You walk the spiral tail slowly, one step after another. It feels meditative, almost musical. A desert waltz, if you will. The ground creaks underfoot, not loudly, just enough to remind you it's listening. The monkey is one of the most well-known Nazca figures, and also one of the most debated. Some archaeologists believe it reflects migration myths, jungle people crossing into the dry lands. Others argue it's connected to constellations, or fertility, or even seasonal rainfall. And some, of course, offer their favorite fallback. We may never know. Historians still debate whether the monkey was meant to be seen as part of the sequence, connected to nearby geoglyphs in a kind of visual poem. Others think it stood alone, mischievously interrupting the more sacred animals with its looping tail and exaggerated limbs. You pause in the center of its curled spine. From here, the figure makes no logical sense. It's just lines, curves, edges. But close your eyes for a moment, and you can feel it move. Not just across the plain, but across time. The desert is full of stillness, but nothing here ever really stops. You rise again, gently now, your body moving slower. Not from exhaustion exactly, though yes, that's part of it, but from the strange awareness that you're beginning to reach the edge of something. A shift, not quite an end, but a soft landing. The desert around you is glowing, not brightly, more like it's remembering how to be gold. The lines on the ground seem clearer in this light, like ink that reappears under heat. You keep walking, the sand cooler now beneath your boots. The evening wind carries something new, the faintest scent of ash. Dry wood, maybe, or memory. You round a gentle bend in the plain, and before you even fully see it, you feel it. The condor. Massive, elegant, and poised, as if ready to launch into the fading sky. Its wings stretch over 400 feet, sharp and angled like blades. Its body is lean, and its head, small, tucked forward, points toward the mountains as if answering some invisible call. Standing near it, you don't feel like you've found a picture. You feel like you've been invited into a myth. The light hits the stone just right now. The grooves are sharper in the amber glow of the setting sun. The feathers feel etched with precision. The wings have motion, sweeping, old, almost impatient. The condor looks like it's waiting for the wind to shift so it can lift off and vanish back into the sky. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some ancient Andean burial sites contain condor talons placed under the head of the dead, believed to provide safe passage to the upper world. They weren't just admired, they were trusted. You walk along the right wing. It takes time. These aren't casual lines. They demand a pace, a rhythm. You let your thoughts slow with your feet. Something about the sheer scale makes you feel small. Yes, but not insignificant. More like you've stepped into something enduring. The condor hasn't changed in over 1,000 years. And yet, here it is, glowing gold in the last light of the day, shifting slightly as the wind carries sand along its edges, hinting at breath, at life. Historians still debate the order in which these figures were made. Some think the geometric shapes came first, then the animals. Others think it was the reverse, a refinement of technique over time. The condor, with its clarity and proportion, is often held up as evidence of a maturing art form. You sit now in the center of its chest, knees drawn up, hands slack in your lap. The sun is nearing the mountains. The wind has changed, cooler, more direct. It sweeps across the plain like it's tidying up for nightfall. You look up. The stars are beginning to arrive, quietly, unhurried. Just a few at first, poking through the blue. And in that moment, it becomes very easy to believe that all of this, was made not for humans on the ground, but for whatever watches from above. You whisper a small thank you, even though you're not sure to whom. Maybe the desert, maybe the wind, or maybe the condor itself, still waiting to take flight after all these centuries. The stars bloom slowly above you like cautious flowers, one by one, hesitant but certain. The desert sky turns from gold to lavender, and slips into the deep blues of a velvet backdrop. The kind you'd expect behind a museum exhibit, except this one has no ropes and no closing hours. Only you and the night. You rise again from the condor's chest, legs stiff but lighter now. The silence has changed too, no longer empty but deep, as if the desert, after holding its breath all day, is finally exhaling. You walk toward the next figure, led only by suggestion. No map now, no coordinates. Just a thin line on the ground that feels more intentional than natural. It arcs forward in a soft, subtle curve, then flattens, then bends again. Eventually, in the moonlight, It resolves into a new creature, the dog. It's not the largest glyph, not the most precise either, but there's something oddly endearing about it. The body is long and rectangular, the legs stiff like it's been caught mid-stride. The head, slightly oversized, has a comical snout, almost cartoonish. You half expect it to bark or sneeze. And yet, there it is. Another symbol, another message, scratched into the ground with absolute confidence. You walk the dog, literally. You pace its body, its tail, its snout. The line depth is more uneven here. Some stones shifted slightly. Time and weather, perhaps? Or maybe this one was made quickly, impulsively. A moment of play amid all the ceremony. Obscure cultural tidbit. Ancient Andean lore often described dogs as guardians of the underworld. Not quite like Cerberus, less fierce, more faithful. They were said to guide the souls of the dead across rivers and deserts alike. A cosmic walking companion. You wonder if this one still waits for someone. You pause at the dog's snout and look up again. The stars are brighter now, reflecting faintly in the sand. You imagine the Nazca watching these same stars, maybe naming constellations, maybe drawing them in the dirt, before scaling up their sketches across the entire plain. Historians still debate whether each geoglyph had a seasonal role, marking time, mapping sky movements, tracking solstices. The dog, some say, aligns loosely with Canis Major. Others say that's a stretch, others shrug. And you can't help but enjoy how often experts in this story end with, "We're not really sure." You sit at the dog's side. The night feels larger than before, softer too. Maybe the desert isn't lonely, just quiet. And maybe the dog's not frozen, just waiting. The night has fully arrived now. A thick, clean blackness. The kind you rarely see anymore. No city lights. No buzzing power lines. Just starlight, moonlight, and a quiet that presses gently on your chest like a blanket. You follow a final set of lines, fainter than the others, but unmistakably deliberate. They stretch outward from a cluster of small shapes, geometric and complex. Triangles, trapezoids, and narrow rectangles, like a bundle of arrows all pointing in different directions. This is the final figure on your journey. The tree and the hands. They sit side by side, not mirrored, not identical, just near one another, like they've been placed in quiet conversation. The tree is abstract, 7 limbs or roots branching out from a central trunk. It doesn't resemble a tree in the way children draw them, but it doesn't feel unnatural either. The hands are more defined, 10 fingers, fanned out, like someone pressed their palms into the earth and held still for a very long time. You stand between them, unsure where to look. The shapes are stark and strange in the moonlight, sharp, almost confrontational, and yet still inviting. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some interpretations of these twin figures suggest they represent duality, life and death, growth and decay, human and nature. Others believe the hands may symbolize participation, that the act of making these lines was just as sacred as the symbols themselves. You reach down and touch the edge of one finger groove. The stone is cool now. It no longer radiates heat, but holds a quiet presence, like a thought that refuses to fade. Historians still debate whether these paired glyphs were meant as opposites or complements. Some say the tree was a fertility symbol, the hands a representation of community. Some say they marked meeting places, sacred intersections. And others say, we may never know, which, by this point, has become a kind of lullaby in its own right. You sit again, one last time, between the two shapes. You rest your hands in the sand. The grooves beside yours are deeper, older, wiser. And for a moment, your fingers align. You close your eyes. The wind hums low. The earth does not move, but the stars, they drift. The final stretch of your journey isn't marked by grand revelation. No hidden glyph suddenly appears in the dust. No glowing stones. No voice from above offering cosmic closure. Just the hush of wind shifting direction. Just the sand curling around your boots. You rise from between the tree and the hands, your own fingers brushing quietly across your thighs as you stand. The stars are fully overhead now, and the desert around you has grown almost transparent in the starlight, like the veil between worlds has thinned, just slightly, and you can see both the past and present all at once. You walk slowly, deliberately, not because there's anywhere left to reach, but because walking feels like remembering. As you wander, shapes begin to reappear in your memory. The spiral of the monkey's tail, the beak of the hummingbird, the spread of the condor's wings. Even the long, strange fingers from earlier in the day, 3 on one hand, 5 on the other. Every glyph still lingers behind your eyes like afterimages. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some modern Nazca descendants believe that walking the lines with reverence can still bring clarity. Answers to questions you didn't know how to ask. The answers don't always come in words. Sometimes they come in stillness, in repetition, in walking the same ground others walked thousands of years ago. You think about the Nazca people, not as a concept or mystery, but as people, with calloused hands, with rituals and jokes and sunburns and hopes. They weren't drawing for you. They were drawing for the gods, for the earth, for themselves. Maybe for no reason at all, except that it mattered. Historians still debate whether the lines were meant for the eyes of the divine, or if they were a kind of communal grounding, art as geography, as memory, as time. But what's certain is this: they were made to last, not by accident, not by erosion, but by design. You find a final resting spot near a narrow line, a simple one, just a groove in the desert heading straight toward the horizon, like an arrow shot across time. You sit and breathe. You lie back in the sand, spine pressing gently into the warm stone beneath you. The desert cradles your body like it's been expecting you. Above, the stars drift in slow procession, ancient, patient, unhurried. You feel their weight not in pressure, but in presence. The air cools, brushing softly over your face, carrying with it the scent of quiet things, dry soil, distant mountains, the long-forgotten breath of people who once knelt where you now rest. There's no sound now but the slow rhythm of your breath. The desert is not empty. It holds memories the way the ocean holds salt, invisible but constant. With every blink, every heartbeat, you fall further into it, into the lines, into the stillness. A spiral loops in your mind. A wing sweeps across your thoughts. A waving figure says nothing at all, and somehow that feels like enough. You don't need to understand everything. You never did. Some stories weren't written for clarity. They were carved for rhythm, for repetition, for sleep. The wind whispers something you don't catch, and that, too, feels right. You close your eyes and let the lines stretch out around you, not as puzzles to be solved, but as lullabies written in dust and silence. Out here, under the stars, everything moves more slowly, and you, finally, are still.